Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the new reveals for demons, dragons, and mechs. Our first card is the Bounding Fellstalker. It's a 4-drop demon, it's got a battle cry, you refresh the tavern, and it's got an extra tavern spell which you can buy with health instead of gold. That is a bit of a hybrid between a Slippery Slider and a Bazaar Dealer, where you get to buy a spell with health, but you also get a roll, and there's an additional spell. That's a pretty fun card. I would say it's not quite as powerful as the cards mentioned, simply because it's a battle cry effect, so you don't get the repeat effect every turn. But that's still a really nice demon to pick up if you have, self-damage prevention, because as I mentioned in the previous video, whenever you have a card that rolls for you, it effectively costs 1 gold less because you don't have to spend money refreshing the tavern. And being able to buy the spell with health is still very nice. And so you can cycle through these, right? Especially if you have a lot of extra economy, you can play this, and then the spell you pick up might give you more economy, hopefully, right? +1, +2 gold, maybe. Seems like a fun card to play once you're online with demons. Then we have Ashen Corruptor, which seems to be the new self-damage prevention. After your hero takes damage, rewind it, and give minions in the tavern +1/+1 this turn. It seems like that's the new Big Brother type minion that buffs the shop, but it's not quite as easy to giga proc as the Big Brother, because Big Brother, it felt a little bit too easy to stack a bunch of spells, and that was incredibly beneficial because you also played the Baddie Terror Guard, which, you wanted to play spells anyway, so Big Brother plus Baddie Terror Guard was incredibly efficient at buffing. Here, you have to do self-damage, which is not super hard when you play demons. We already saw an effect. Wrathweaver is probably still in the game, so you can use that to deal damage to yourself, and demons generally have lots of effects, but in general, it should be less efficient, in my estimation, than just spamming spells. It seems like a really fun card. It's a tier 4 minion, which is also really good, because something that happens all the time is you're on tier 4, you have something like Malchezaar, you roll Percussionist, but you didn't get the Rewinder, so you don't have self-damage prevention, and an Archimant was on tier 5, so you had to triple into it, or you didn't have to go to 5, and it was pretty awkward. So whenever there is a second self-damage prevention card on tier 4, it becomes a lot more accessible to play demons, which in my opinion is just fun. So it's a fun card. I like that they put it on tier 4. Then we have the Fellfire Conjurer. That is a hybrid card, so a demon dragon, which looks super cool, by the way. I talked about this earlier. Having the class colors, the warrior and the warlock in this case, warlock for demons, which is obvious, and then warrior for dragons, which makes sense, dragon warrior. That looks very cool. So it's almost a shame to have the golden card not look like that, because it's probably just because it's new. Anyways, at the end of your turn, your tavern spells that give stats grant an additional 1/1 this game. So we have seen that in the previous reveals as well. This is the tavern spell buffing, stacks with Drakari. The stat line is decent. However, I wouldn't really feel too happy to put this on my board just to have it. I would want to get some value off it straight away. So I'd like to have a Drakari when I get this, or I would like to have some kind of indication that I'm going to play some tavern spell buffing strategy, because after all, it is a tier 5, and if you buy a tier 5 and it doesn't really have any impact, that sets your game back quite a bit. So, I wouldn't want to buy this unconditionally. I'd be looking to move into the strategy for sure. Next, we have Shadow Dancer. That is a tier 5 death rattle, get a Staff of Enrichment, so that already synergizes with the card we just saw, because this would give additional staff buffs to the shop. I can really see, again, a setup with Titus. We see some really interesting death rattle synergy. We saw that with the Party Guests. We can use Party Guest and a Golden Titus and farm lots of those spells. Same thing with the Shadow Dancer. If we can set up a Golden Shadow Dancer, Golden Titus situation, suddenly you get 6 staffs in your hand during the combat. That not only gives you a lot of shop buffs, but it also gives you a lot of spells in your hand, which can then activate Baddie Terror Guard or any of the other spell synergy cards we've seen. So definitely some synergy here. I'm definitely going to play around with some Menagerie or just in general spell Titus builds, because it seems like a lot of fun to farm all these spells during the combat. The one downside here is that you do have a 5/2 stat line on a 5-drop, so you are going to be set back when it comes to tempo. So it seems like this is a card that you either need to get really early, or you need to have a good board to already be able to support it, because you're going to be pretty weak for a while you're getting this online. And then the new Demon 6-drop is Dream Inquisitor. Whenever you cast a tavern spell, deal 1 damage to your hero and give your demons 1/1. Okay, so we see the synergy here. A little bit like Make Your Own Big Brother, where if we go back to the previous card, Ashen Corruptor says whenever your hero takes damage, you get minions in Tavern 1/1. And if you have Dream Inquisitor, now you will also deal damage to yourself when you cast a Tavern spell. That is still strong, but the big difference here is that Big Brother was a 4-drop, so you could use eyes on it, and you could quite easily have 2 golden Big Brothers. Having 2 golden Dream Inquisitors is going to be much more difficult. But I do like that they still have that, because it was very enjoyable to do the spell spamming strategy. The one thing that was really frustrating about it is that your game started lagging like crazy if you just played too many spells, or you had too many baddie Terror Guards or Big Brothers, or I still don't know exactly what was causing it, but if you had a really good demon game, the game just slowed down. So that's one of the things I do hope that will be addressed if we are going to continue in this spell spamming strategy, that your game won't slow down like crazy. Either way, it looks like a fun card to play if you have the Ashen Corruptor already on your board. Then we got Baddie Terror Guard coming back down to tier 5. Again, that's most likely because Big Brother is been removed. We're going to see that in just a moment. And we have some replacements for him. It just makes it less accessible to shop buffing. It's not quite as excessive as it was before. And here we can then see the removed cards. So Big Brother, we already mentioned that. No more Tichondrius, no more Archimond, no more Furious Driver, and also no Nether Construct. That makes sense. It's time to make some space for new cards. Archimond was a huge part of why demons were able to go infinite. If you had something like Malchezaar or even Golden Malchezaar on your board, that's a very easy way to deal damage to yourself. Very easy way to then buy spells. Something like Careful Investment, Overconfidence, Chef's Choice even made it very easy to get additional value, and then also trigger your Baddie Terror Guard. While demons don't appear to be super weak from what we have seen, it will definitely set them back where you don't have that easy access to infinite resources when you have something like Archimond plus Malchezaar. So I think that's good. Demons are currently very strong when you get them online, so it's good to nerf them a little bit. Then we have some new trinkets. Shadowy Elixir is a 0-cost one. You gain 5 armor, and after you play a demon, deal 1 damage to your hero. That feels a little troll, simply because the armor animation is so bad. But it's only bad if you remove all your armor. So as long as you're not dealing 5 damage, so for instance, Percussionist, discovering a 5-drop and then dealing 5 damage to your hero is incredibly slow if it removes all your armor and then the armor comes back. That's the first thing I thought about. Like, oh, they're going to give me armor and then I get to do self-damage. But I understand why they do it, because it's good to give you some extra health if you pick up this trinket. If you don't have self-damage reduction, at least you can say, okay, I can just deal damage to myself 5 times without effectively losing health. So this seems like something that is incredibly conditional. You very much prefer to already have at least Rewinder on your board, and if possible, Ashen Corruptor. Although it's going to be pretty difficult to have that 4-drop on turn 6 ready to go. Yeah, this seems to be a Rewinder exclusive where you really want to have that self-damage protection already. Then Wax Imprinter gives you 2 gold at the start of each turn, and then you take 2 damage if possible. So I suppose that means that if you only have 1 health, it doesn't work, and I'm assuming it doesn't work if you have 2 health, but then again, taking 2 damage is possible if you have 2 health. But I'm assuming that this is going to prevent you from inflicting self-lethal. Although, no confirmation on that. We'll have to see. This seems okay. At the start of each turn, gain 2 gold, take 2 damage. Seems, you know, my intuition here is that I'm not super happy about it. I would need to have, at the very least, a Rewinder. And again, if I just have a Rewinder, I take this trinket on turn 6, and then on turn 7, I'll have 11 gold instead of 9. And that's okay. And then I keep getting extra gold. So I think it's very much going to depend on what's in the shop and how much I care about spending gold. Because I don't think this is premium, but anytime you can have a trinket that doesn't cost you any gold, it can make for a very good turn, and that alone could be worth it. So assuming you have Rewinder, and assuming that you have a great way to spend all your money, meaning that you level, you buy a unit, and you're very happy with that, and you actually didn't want to spend any money on the trinket, this could be a good pick. But I think if your gold's awkward after taking the 0-cost trinket, I'm not going to be super happy about it. Implicator Portrait. For 1 gold, you get a false Implicator, and then your demons always consume the highest health minion in the tavern. That has some cool synergy where I don't know if Balladist is still in, but you could use Balladist on the shop to buff it, and then the Implicator will eat the Balladist buff. That's cool, and there's other ways to do things like that, where you can throw a buff in the shop and then you know it's going to eat it. Same thing with spellcrafts. You could throw a bunch of spellcrafts on the shop and then you know your Implicator will eat the thing with the spellcrafts. So if you have a setup for this, if you've already played some, let's say, staffs to buff the shop, if you already have an Implicator on the board, if you have something like a bunch of spellcrafts on your board where you can target the shop and buff it. I think this is a fun choice. Again, pretty conditional, but good if you can get it online in the right spot. Impulsive Portrait. You get a Trickster, and your Trickster's Death Rattle targets adjacent minions. So I assume that means that we get twice the effectiveness here, or it will only go on those targets. I'm guessing it will only go on those targets. This would actually be good to get some clarification on, because it doesn't necessarily say that you get more effectiveness of the Tricksters. It just says that the Death Rattle goes to the adjacent minions. So I guess that's fair to assume that it will just go on one or the other, not on both at the same time. That's my current interpretation of this. I mean, it's okay. This is a Taragosa combo if you have the perma buffs. That strategy has not been that strong the last few metas, so that's why I'm a little bit concerned about this. Trickster stacking and Trickster buffing has not been really the way to go. If for whatever reason that comes back in the meta, then of course you can use this to always buff a Taragosa, or, you know, any dragon next to a poet, or any other means of making the combat buff permanent. My first instinct here is, unless you have a very big Trickster on your board already, then it's a very niche pick, but I wouldn't really pivot into Trickster on turn 6 where you say, oh, you know, now I build a Trickster, and it doesn't really seem worth it. Then we got the Pilgrim Sticker. 1 demon each turn, costs health instead of gold. You get a Pilgrim, that's fine. If you have a Rewinder on the board, that's a solid choice, so I'm not opposed to that. Because Pilgrim is generally a little bit annoying in that it costs board space, and you really don't have a lot of board space if you play demons, because you want the Malchezaar, you need the Rewinder, or, you know, in this case now the Corruptor. You're going to want the Baddie Terror Guard later on. So Pilgrim generally for me is the demon that ends up getting sold, so it's kind of fun that you can keep it without it consuming board space. Bazaar Sticker, same deal. 1 Tavern spell each turn, costs health instead of gold to buy. Both the Bazaar Sticker and the Pilgrim Sticker are going to be dependent on you having the Rewinder on the board already. Otherwise, it can be a correct pick where it just really works out. So let's say you have Bazaar Sticker as a choice. It costs you 6 gold to tier, 2 gold to take the sticker. That's a perfect 8 gold spent, so that's already a plus. And then the spell in the shop is something like the 4-cost spell that gives you either 2/2 or 4/4. Then we are suddenly talking, okay, even if I don't have a Rewinder, I can buy that for 3 health. I have a pretty perfect turn in terms of my gold spent, and my whole board is going to get +4/+4 next round. That can already be worth it, and then you just hope you find self-damage prevention. If not, it's a little bit awkward where you can't buy tavern spells without hitting yourself in the face. So definitely a little bit of a risky proposition, and much nicer if you already have the Rewinder on the board. Elemental Portrait we've already covered. In the Elemental reveal, it's just nice. You can farm with the Titus, you can farm with, you know, Macaw if that's gonna stay, and Chicken if that's gonna stay. So anything to trigger death rattles, you can get a big shop, and anytime you get a big shop, good stuff just happens, because even if you can't consume the shop, you can still triple huge minions, and that's strong. Then we have the returning trinkets. As before, I'm not going to spend too much time on these, otherwise we're going to have very long videos. Minions in the tavern have 3/3, generally not good, but can be a tempo choice if you need it. Cheese Wheel we've already covered, generally not that good, but if you have Malchezaar, it gets a lot better. Soulwinder Portraits, generally not that good. However, we do have a lot of self-damage synergy now, so if for whatever reason you're desperate for a Soul Rewinder, you can take this, but I'm usually not that happy about taking it. Then we have the Greater Trinkets. We have the Shatara Sticker, which is the 6-drop. So that's kind of a cool thing they're doing, where they're just giving you access to a minion without needing it on the board, which makes your ultimate board a lot stronger, because now, especially for this, because this is a combat minion, you effectively can take 8 minions into combat. This says after your last minion dies each combat, your board is empty, then the Shatara Sticker comes online, and it resummons the first demon that died with maximum stats. This is very, very powerful if Bramble Witch is not going to be in, because the counter to Shatara used to be Bramble Witch, where if you were playing in a lobby where there was no Bramble Witch, so there was no option to make the big taunted demon a 3/3, you would just play Shatara, you would make a huge demon with taunt. Even if the opponent would Leroy it, you would still get it back at the end of the combat or whenever your Shatara died. Now the downside here is that because it's not a death rattle and it's not on the board, you can't trigger it with Macaw, you can't use Titus. you generally won't have more ways of resummoning it. So it is a little bit capped, but it's still a really nice bonus to win the fight with. Then we have the returning trinkets, Nether Pendant. There are lots of ways to deal self-damage now, so this probably got better. We didn't see Malchezaar being removed, so we're still going to have easy access to that. And we have some additional ways of dealing self-damage with the new 6-drop, where you can cast a lot of tavern spells, deal damage, and then also buff the shop with the Corruptor. So seems like Nether Pendant got better. Eye of Sargeras was big economy. Every 4th card you buy costs health instead of gold. So if you want to go infinite with demons, this is a difficult trinket to play, but it's quite strong if you can get it online. You have to get into a good rhythm where you buy 3 cheap cards, or even, you know, better than cheap is free if you can use something like your Pilgrim sticker or your Bazaar Dealer sticker. And then the 4th card, you buy a big expensive spell or so, and now you have that for free, and you can use that to make some more money, and that's going to pay for your next 3 cards, and then your 4th card is free, and yada yada yada. And because you're dealing damage, you're triggering all your self-damage effects, which is really fun. Difficult trinket to play because you need to really plan your turns properly and generally play pretty fast. But if you can get it to work, it's very strong. Mechadrax's sticker gives you 2 random magnetic mecha demons, and at the start of each turn get 2 more. This is like okay. This is something you take if you're just not excited about the other options. It is better now that we have Divine Shield as an option, but I'm still never really excited about a Mechadrax's sticker, but it can be okay if you're, you know, you're playing demons and you're just like, okay, I guess I'll just take this because I don't like the other options. Big Cheese Wheel, again, Malchezaar, very good, otherwise not so good. Velbat Portraits, that is a really fun one to play with because now the tavern always has 7 cards. Even if you're not stacking Felbats, which, you know, is really fun because now you can play Drakari with Felbat, you can play multiple Felbats, you can play multiple golden Felbats if you're very lucky, and you can just continue eating the shop, which is really fun to just end of turn watch you go eat, and again, eat. However, even if you're not really focused on Felbats, you still have a very enjoyable way to play the game because if you're playing something like Batty Terragard, a lot of the time what happens is you need to cast your spells and then the shop is empty and then you have to roll and you need to plan that out. With this trinket, it's just like eat, come back, eat, come back, eat, come back. It's very user friendly. So for that alone, it's a fun trinket to play with. All right, we've arrived at the new dragon cards. First, we have the Greenskeeper. After this attacks, trigger your rightmost battle cry. That is very fun. That has a lot of opportunity for economy. We're going to see some obvious synergy in the next few cards. The cool thing here is that it says trigger your rightmost battle cry. It makes it very easy to put your economy or whatever battle cry you really want to trigger in the back so it won't attack and suicide and then, you know, not be eligible as a target. And you can hide it behind taunts, and it's just, it seems very fun that it automatically specifies the rightmost battle cry. It just makes it very easy. Just put the thing you want to trigger all the way on the right, and then the Greenskeeper all the way in the front. Then we have Felfire Conjurer popping back up because it is a demon and dragon card, so we're going to see some dragon synergy. We will want Drakari. Dragons in general already like Drakari, so like we said in the demon part of this review, if we have the synergy for it, it's going to be quite good. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to pick it up. Here we have the obvious synergy. Battle Cry, get a random dragon. Because triggering battle cries into combat isn't permanent. Unless it's something like this, where you put stuff in your hand, because then it is permanent. It's just straight value. We can easily get into a situation where we have a golden Whimsy Drake, and you have, say, a Bran on the board, and you attack with the Greenskeeper, and now all of a sudden you trigger the battle cry twice because you have Bran, and if you're Wind Fury Dragon, sorry, it's not Wind Fury yet, but we're gonna have a way to give a Wind Fury in just a moment. If that then attacks twice, suddenly you have a hand full of dragons. And when you have a hand full of dragons, suddenly you're tripling stuff and things are getting even more effective. And, you know, just seems like exactly the way how I would want to play the game. This is also just very good with Bran, even if you're playing none of the Greenskeeper strategy we just talked about. If you have a Bran on your board and you buy the Whimsy Drake, at the very least you are breaking even. So we are talking 2 terrible dragons, no economy, no synergy, no nothing. You can still buy this card for 3 gold, sell it in its entirety for 3 gold, and you didn't waste any money. It will trigger Caligos and all that. So that is a wonderful card to cycle. And there's obviously just way more upside if you can trigger it multiple times, or if the dragons you get are beneficial battle cries or triples and all that. So super fun cards to pick up once you have a Bran. We have Bronze Steward, Battle Cry, and Death Rattle give your other dragons 7 tech. So another target for the Greenskeeper, where you can put this on the very far right, and whenever the Greenskeeper attacks, it gives your whole dragon board extra attack, which seems like a lot of fun. It's good tempo. You can have Poet, you can have Taragosa, get the permanent scaling, so it seems like a really solid tempo option if you're not going to go for the value option of generating more dragons. And even if you don't have the Greenskeeper synergy, this will still be quite strong when you put it down. Your whole board gets 7 attack. You put it all the way in the front, it dies, you get another 7 attack. Again, if you have Poet or Taragosa, that's going to be permanent. So seems like a really solid tempo option. Then we have a Dragon Naga, which again, super cool. The dual class borders, I love what they've done with that. Battlecry and Death Rattle get a shiny ring. We talked about how there is a lot of Tavern spell buffing synergy. So your shiny ring is 1/1, but what if it's 7/7? Suddenly this is a lot better. You can use this with Bran, you can trigger it with the Greenskeeper. You could have Titus. There's probably still some ways to trigger Death Rattles additionally during the combat, be it either, you know, Macaw or the Hawkstrider. Yeah, seems like this will have a very good place in any of those synergy Tavern spell buffing. But again, if you don't have any of that synergy, it's pretty mediocre, because who cares about getting, you know, 1 or 2 shiny rings. But if you have the spell buffs, great option. Now we have the new Dragon 6-drop, the Fireforged Evoker. At the start of combat, give your dragons +1/+1. After you cast 2 Tavern spells, improve this. So I'm assuming we cast 2 Tavern spells, now it'll be 2/2, and then 3/3, and then 4/4. This is already a good reason to farm those shiny rings if you've cast a bunch of those. Let's say you have the perfect synergy for it, and you start your turn with 6 or maybe even 8 shiny rings in your hand. That goes very fast with the Fireforged Evoker, where you're now just playing tons of spells. Oh man, just talking about this, I can't wait to try it. That seems like so much fun, where you have 1 or 2 Fireforged Evokers and you just let it rip, man. Your whole hand is full of spells, and boom. Because it's a start of combat buff, which means it's not permanent, but on the other hand, it is scaling, so you keep getting stronger. And if you have Poet, you have Golden Poet, if you have Taragosa, you can still get those permanent effects. So it seems like a lot of fun to try out that strategy where we are farming spells and then we have Evoker on our board. Then we have some returning cards, or maybe some changed cards. After you trigger a Battlecry, get 1/+1, so that's still the Skyfin we know. It's just a fun little hybrid, a Murloc Dragon, so Shaman Warrior hybrid. This card got a lot better when it changed it to trigger, simply because now it works with Bran, so it grows a lot faster. It's an okay pickup, but I don't really like it if there's no other Battlecry in the shop. Then here is the Wind Fury option I talked about earlier. You can put this on the board, give your Greenskeeper Wind Fury. If it has Divine Shield or just a lot of health, it can easily hit twice, and you can farm more value. So this almost seems like something you want to farm, where you want to get your Paper Drake on board, you want to get the Poet, you want to put it next to the Greenskeeper, give it permanent Wind Fury, and then you can get rid of this guy. But it seems like a really solid setup to give your Greenskeeper Wind Fury. Rallier is back. This card is horrible. With horrible, I mean it's horrible if it's on my opponent's board. It's so much tempo early, it just hits you for a lot of that. This card is like deal 10 damage to the opponent. If you have a board full of dragons and you have like 2 Roaring Ralliers when you go to tier 3 early, oh man, it's disgusting. So they've nerfed this card already. It used to be +3/+2, I believe, but it's still just so much tempo. So especially if it's hidden behind the taunt, it's a nasty tempo option early on. Ignition Specialist is back. At the end of the turn, get 2 random Tavern spells. So that's another way to trigger the Evoker. So super fun. I really love playing with Specialists. Anything that just generates a bunch of Tavern spells, generates value. I love tripling into that early. So if you can triple into an Ignition Specialist early, that's almost always going to be the correct pick, simply because it will cause a snowball effect. If you get this on, say, turn 7, right? 7 is usually when you get your 6-drop. That is just going to give you so much value from then onward that you're just going to keep getting stronger, because you have now more money to spend, more value. So super fun card to play with. Then we have the removed cards. No more Front Rake. That makes sense. Front Rake is very, very strong. Almost, and this is something that a lot of people, especially newer players, are surprised by. They say, wow, but I lose the first 2 fights guaranteed. Why would I ever want to put a 1/1 on my board? Simply because you will get a random dragon, which is at the very least a 1-drop. And, you know, there's a reasonable chance it's going to be a 2-drop by the time it triggers. And from then on, it's just pure bonus, where you get extra money, extra tempo. So it's absolutely worth taking the damage early. Then we have no more Synthesizer Drake, Nether Drake, no Engineer, which is a little sad. I love playing with Engineer. I think it's a super fun end of turn trigger, but it's likely going to be a little bit too strong with all the possible end of turn shenanigans we've already seen. And then no Nightbane, which for me honestly is good riddance. I hate Nightbane. I think this card just, it cheats too much damage. It's so easy to suddenly get, oh, look, my guy has like 500 damage out of nowhere. It's, you know, you work the entire game for this like really big health board and it still just gets rolled by Nightbane. So good riddance for me. Then we have no more Hunter of Gatherers, which is a little sad. That's a super fun unit to play with. No Stormbringer, no Sanctum Rester. Those guys only came back in the last part of this meta, so that's fine. No Drakasat, Cyborg Drake, or Warpwing. No Warpwing is pretty huge, but I can see them needing some space to fit the new tier 6 dragons. And we're not getting rid of Kaligos, so, you know, Warping does have to go. Drakasat would be a really good random dragon to get from the generated random dragon, so I can also understand why that is out. Lots of dragon cards going out, but we also have some really cool stuff coming in. Then for the new trinkets, we have Yulon Sticker. Start of combat, make your highest tier dragon golden. That seems really good if you have a setup for dragons, because this is usually the card that you really wanted to triple into when you were playing dragons that revolved around Poet, because you can make the cards golden with Poet. Now, the one tricky thing here is when you get the Yulon Sticker this early, so turn 6, it will only really make perma-goldens with Taragosa, because if you have Poet, there is a really high chance that Poet is going to be your highest tier dragon, and it won't perma-golden itself. So in order for this to start making perma-goldens, you would need to have 2 Poets on the board, and then have them golden each other one by one. So that would be the only drawback here, but it's still really nice if you're playing dragons to just have this, because you will be able to set up a nice full golden dragon board eventually with the help of Poet. Then we have War Drum. 1 battle cry each turn triggers an additional time. This does not really seem that good at that stage of the game, because you're going to be on 8 gold, you're going to get this for 2 gold, and then you need a good battle cry in the shop. So I would say this is almost only a pick if you have a battle cry that will give you a lot of value in the shop, and then you get the extra value. So maybe I'm missing something here, and please let me know in the comments if I am, but it seems like this is going to be a tough one to set up, where it'll take a while for this to get the value. I suppose if you take the War Drum and level on the same turn, then you're on tier 4, and you can get a battle cry that you can get additional value starting then. So maybe that is the way to go, and it's not necessary to stay an extra turn on 3. Because most of your good stuff starts on tier 4, and especially on tier 5, that's where you have the really nice battle cries, such as the Rodeo Performer. So yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe this is just a bit of a greedier trinket that you have to set up for, where you take a couple steps back in the early in the mid game, but then once you're on tier 5, this really starts paying off. And then we have Taragosa Sticker. Your left and rightmost dragons permanently keep enchantments from the combat. So this seems very fun, where you can pick this up if you have a good setup for dragons. The big downside, as we mentioned in other reveals already, is that it costs 4. So anytime a lesser trinket costs 4, it is very difficult to also go to tier 4 on the same turn, which does set your game back quite a bit. So I would say you only really want to take the Taragosa Sticker if you already have some setup for it. So ideally, you have something like a Greenskeeper, and you can give it permanent Wind Fury with your Paper Drake, or you get something like a Promo Drake on the board, where you farm some permanent stats. If you don't have any synergy for this, this seems like a very risky trinket to take, because it's going to sit you back in your leveling and you won't get immediate value from it. Then the returning trinkets, Smuggler Portrait, get a Whelp Smuggler, set its stats to 412. That's new. Your Whelp Smugglers are dragons. Okay, so looks like they really want you to try out Whelp Smuggler Portrait, because this is a lot better than the previous Whelp Smuggler Portrait. You now have a Kali Smuggler. Yeah, okay, that's tempo. Man, if you have a setup for dragons, let's go. Let's pick up some tempo. Let's get a 412 Whelp Smuggler with some buffs. It's gonna fall off eventually, but, you know, that's a good chunk of tempo to put down. This seems nice. So yeah, I'll definitely try this out. Keychain, it's basically a Taragosa or a Poet trinket. You make a big dragon, then you get permanent stats, and then you have another big dragon, and then, you know, you keep juggling that, and you keep getting bigger and bigger. But if you can't set it up with Poet or Tarek, not worth. Glider is generally not that good, but under the right condition, it's fine. Although we did see that we're no longer going to have Hunter of Gatherer, so you can't use that to trigger and get a lot of health. So it seems like something you take if you're just not very happy with the rest and you have some dragons on the board. I remember whenever I took this, I was just trying to stabilize, and I wasn't really happy about my pick. So then we have Holy Mallet, gives permanent Divine Shield if you have, again, Poet or Taragosa, so it's okay if you have the setup for it. Otherwise, I'm not that happy about taking this. Rockin' Music Box. You get a random battle cry minion, and at the start of each turn, you get another. We already know that. That's, you know, decent value. This is fine to take. Usually, it's a little bit awkward in a demon lobby because you can get a lot of self-damage stuff. So that's the only time where I'd say be a little bit careful taking this if you don't have a rewinder already. Then we have a new greater trinket, the Valdrakken Wind Chimes. Your start of combat effects trigger twice. Okay, that seems really fun with the tier 6 dragon that buffs at the start of combat. We also have something like the Divine Shield from the Amber. We have Promo Drake. So if you are playing dragons, this seems like a really fun one to take. Fairy Dragon Scale. Whenever a friendly dragon attacks, give it Divine Shield 3 times for combat. This is so good with the Greenskeeper, right? So Greenskeeper, you can give a Wind Fury, and then it'll attack, get shield, attack, get shield again. So that's an easy way to proc that one over and over. You can also put a Poet down. Again, dragons are just all about Poet and Taragosa. You need to get those effects, and more Poet than Taragosa, because with Poet, everything's a Taragosa if you just position the Poet. So you can easily Divine Shield your first at least 2 and probably 3 minions that are attacking. So I can also see why there's no Warpwing. Giving Warpwing Wind Fury and giving a Divine Shield is disgusting. So yeah, that can't coexist. But you can still, you know, go very high damage. In general, dragons just benefit a lot from not having stuff like beasts, undead, mechs in the lobby, because that's a lot of tokens. Dragons, they just want to fight stuff that have a lot of health, but not a lot of tokens or divine shields themselves, because dragons are great at dealing damage, but they're really bad at dealing with something like, you know, beetles, for instance. Then we have Poet Portraits. Get a Poet and Promo Drake. That seems underwhelming for a greater trinket, but hey, sometimes, and I really know the feeling, you're just saying, all I need is a Poet, and then you're like, I'll take it. So very, very conditional, I would say, if you're in a position where you say, I really need a Poet, and then this trinket rolls around and you say, I'll take it. But other than that, kind of whatever, right? You get a Poet and a Drake. That's generally not worth a greater trinket. Battlehorn, you get a Battlecry minion, and you also get the effect Avenge 3, trigger a friendly Battlecry. Okay, that one is a little weird because dragons really don't do Avenge very well. As we just talked about it, dragons are all about Divine Shield and high damage. They don't really do a lot of reboarding. They don't do a lot of death rattling. So it seems like this one is a bit of a hybrid pick where you can get Battlehorn. You can have a really good Battlecry on the far right, and that's your only Battlecry. And then we want it to be, you know, a value-oriented Battlecry. And then the front half of your board kind of needs to be stuff like, you know, Raptor, Mana Saber, something to trigger the Avenge over and over. Intuitively, it feels a little bit off for a dragon trinket, and I don't really see the path forward with this one, because 5 gold is quite a bit, and I also have to set up my board to get multiple triggers on it. So my intuition here is that this one feels bad. The returning trinkets, Bronzebeard Portrait. Hey, sometimes all you need is a brand. So, you know, same as we talked about earlier, sometimes all you need is a Poet. Same thing with brand. I take this trinket frequently because I just like, okay, getting a brand is good enough. Let's just go, let's pop off. The added benefit is that you get a random Battlecry minion, and you also have a type on your brand. But I would say that it's not really the biggest reason why you take this, because is it fun to buff your brand, treat it like it's a dragon or a murloc? Yes, but just the fact that you get the brand is much more important. Bronze Timepiece, this is a really good Vol'jin trinket. Give each of your minions health equal to attack. What you do with Vol'jin is you move all the attack on top of your biggest minion, and then you put a Poet next to it. During the combat, it will gain health equal to the attack, and then it'll just have a ton of health permanently. Super strong Vol'jin trinket. It's almost a reason to just take Vol'jin in dragon lobbies. Then we have the big glider. Whenever you play a card, give a friendly dragon 8/3. Again, I'm not generally such a fan of the glider cards. It feels like you can do better, especially now that Warpwing is out. You don't have that premium buff target anymore. Generally, I like other greater trinkets. Essence of Dreams. If you have the setup for it, this is really good. So brand for the most part. Get 2 Dreamer's Embraces. At the start of each turn, get 2 more. If you were already playing around Greenskeeper and you already have the Battlecry dragon that generates that generates dragons, this is a fantastic one, especially if you already have a golden Battlecry dragon on your board. You can use this, get 2 dragons, get 2 more. You have a brand, you get 4, you get another 4, and you get a dragon, and everybody gets a dragon. So conditional can be a horrible trinket if you don't have the setup for it, but it's amazing if you do. We've arrived at the new Mech cards. The first one is Metallic Hunter. Death Rattle, get a pointy arrow. It's a 2/1 Mech. That's pretty fun, seeing as we've seen a lot of the Tavern spell buffing mechanics, so this could be a decent pickup early, where you can use this to buff a Divine Shield and, you know, just get a little bit of value. It does have the downside that you're putting a 2/1 on your board, so it is pretty weak when you put it down, but then almost immediately after the first combat, it sort of makes up for its stat line. If you can put 4 damage on the Divine Shield, it's already fine, and then every turn after that, it just keeps getting better. I would be pretty happy to take Metallic Hunter on turn 3. Springy Spriggan. It's a magnetic, and it says at the end of your turn, give your other mechs +1 attack. So that means that when we magnetize this on top of a unit, that unit will now have the effect of giving the other mechs +1 attack. That seems a little tricky to set up early, but once you have a setup for it, especially with Drukhari, that's quite nice to get a lot of these. And I can really see that happening. You can just farm a lot of magnetics and then have Drukhari, and you'll just get a lot of Spriggans, and your board ends up growing. So I'm not sure if I love this early. If you have a big mech board, it's good, of course. It's just I'm thinking, let's say I go 3-on-3 and I see this in my shop. Am I happy to pick that up? Probably not yet, right? But if you happen to have an early game where you have a lot of mechs, and then you see a Spriggan pop in the shop, then it's fine, of course. Next up, we have the Auto Assembler. It's a magnetic with Death Rattle, Summon an Ancestral Automaton. So quite literally, automaton on a stick. That seems good if you started with Automaton, and especially if you have Automaton Portrait, to farm more automatons. You just have to be a little bit careful with Reborn, because Death Rattle has priority over Reborn, so you might lose the Reborn value if you put this Death Rattle up a little bit too early. But you can put this on an automaton, and now the automaton has Death Rattle, summon an automaton. I'm assuming that this can stack, where you can give it multiple Death Rattles, summon automatons. So you could have some really nasty surprise in the back of your board where you have multiple auto assemblers on top of a mech, and suddenly it pops out a bunch of automatons. So that seems a little scary under the right circumstances, where if you have a good start with automaton, or you have a hero like Terran, and you can really abuse this. Yeah, well, we're gonna have to see, because that sounds nasty if you could just stack this on top of one unit and then use Terran. That's a lot of automatons. Then we have Rickety Repair Bot. At the end of your turn, magnetize a random magnetic mech to this. Okay, so we talked earlier about the ability to get a lot of the end of turn mechs, the Springy Spriggan. If you can generate this randomly, it's really nice to stack, because now you can get a ton of attack on your board, and obviously mechs can get Divine Shield very easily, which makes it a lot more powerful than if it was on a different type. So Repair Bot seems like a really fun card to put down early, especially if you can enhance it with Drukhari. Seems like a fun pickup. And then we have Electron Powered Up. That's the new tier 6 mech. After you cast 2 Tavern spells, magnetize the 3/3 satellites to all your mechs. It doesn't say then improve the satellites, so we have to assume that it's going to stay a 3/3, but there are all kinds of ways to benefit from having magnetics on the board, so we're gonna have to see just how good that is. We know that there's plenty ways to generate lots of Tavern spells with these Death Rattles that generate Tavern spells or other mechanics. So we're gonna see a little bit of synergy for this coming up as well. Then we have some returning or changed cards. Cord Puller, we all know that. It's Divine Shield 1/1, summons a 1/1. Pretty strong and fun 1-drop to begin with. Mechanome now says whenever a friendly magnetic minion is played or magnetized, give it 2/3. Something that you could do is you could have the Voltron, sorry, the Electron. You could have Electron with the Mechanome, and that would give you lots of additional value. Because a 3/3 satellite, if you have 2 golden Mechanomes, is now getting way more stats than just 3/3. So now it's suddenly worth to spam a lot of spells and watch your board grow. Technical Element, we've already seen this in a previous review. It's now a 10/10, so that can easily get a lot of tempo. If we get this on a Rickety Repair Bot, suddenly we get +10/+10. That seems like fun. Then removed cards, no more Annoyatron, so you can't get a super easy pointy arrow target for the magnetic with Death Rattle pointy arrow. No Accordotron, which makes sense if it's so easy to spam magnetics with, say, the Rickety Repair Bot. This thing is too good. It's the reason that mechs go infinite. You just have way too much money. No more Lighter Fighter, which is a little sad. I think this guy is really fun to play with. It's super fun to snipe Exodia boards. And then no Clunker. Clunker also seems too powerful, because we would be able to farm tons and tons and tons of magnetics, and you would just get way too much value. So I can understand why they're out. Then we have more removed cards. No more Gift Horse, Moonsteel, Cyborg Drake, Kangor out. That makes sense if we're going to have such easy access to automatons. It's probably a bit too strong if we also have access to Kangor. And then no Utility Drone. That also makes sense. We can get so many magnetics so easily with the new tier 6 mech that Utility Drone would just pop off. The new mech trinkets. First one here, after you play a magnetic minion, get a random tavern spell. So you have to play it. I don't think it works if it's played for you. We see that Electron here says after you cast 2 tavern spells, magnetize a satellite to all your mechs. So the wording here makes me think that that wouldn't work. I'm not sure if I really love this then, because it seems difficult to just generate a lot of magnetics where there's no more Accordatron I'm buying. Maybe if I have the spell that has end of turn, get a magnetic, and then I have Jokari, that seems like fun. But that's difficult to plan for. So I guess you can take this if there's magnetics in the shop and you're happy buying them, or you somehow have one in your hand ready to go. But this seems a little difficult to trigger right now. I guess with the new Automaton magnetic, that's something that you would be happy buying, so that's a way to get some extra value. Battlecruiser portrait. You get a battlecruiser, and whenever the tavern's refreshed, so basically you're Rainer when you have this. It's Rainer portrait, you become Rainer. That seems like fun. The one problem is that you weren't able to buy any upgrades before this, but that's okay because most of the time when you play Rainer, you want to level because the good upgrades are on a higher tier. This seems like a lot of fun. Just 2 gold to get a battlecruiser. I'm down. And then you just level on tier 5, you start buying upgrades, and yeah, suddenly you're playing Rainer. Yeah, very fun lesser trinket. For 3 gold, we got reusable batteries. The first time you buy a minion each turn, get a magnetic satellite with its stats. So my mind immediately jumps to something like spellcrafts, tavern spells, blood gems, any way to increase the stats temporarily in the shop of the minion you're buying, or permanently, and then you buy the minion and now you have a big magnetic. It seems a little slow to set up, so it's probably something you want to do if you're not leveling to tier 4 on the very same turn, because that way you buy the batteries for 3, you buy a minion from the shop, you get a satellite as well, and then you also, let's say, buy a spell for 2 gold, or you sell a minion off your board and you buy another minion. The good thing here is that it's probably going to be able to triple. So when you buy the minion on turn 6, you get a satellite and then you don't magnetize it. The next turn you level and you buy, you get another satellite, and the turn after that you can either sell units of your board to level buy and get a 6-drop, or you can just buy a minion, triplets, and now you have a golden satellite, which will give you a 5-drop. I'd be interested in playing it for that early on, and then later on you could do some cool stuff with buffing the shop to get bigger magnetics. So for that reason I like this, because you can generate triples with it. Again, that's under the condition that it is a triplable card, which usually it should be, right? The Moonsteel satellites are also able to triple. Divine Signet. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, get a random tavern spell 3 times per combat. That's much better in my estimation than the one with the magnetic, simply because if I have 3 Divine Shield minions on the board, I can take Divine Signet, and now I get 3 spells each combat, pretty much no matter what. That's really good. That's a lot of free value. If we have a lot of shields on the board, I'm pretty happy to take this. Sure, I'm not going to level to tier 4 on the same turn, but the amount of money value that I make from getting these free spells should make up for that and allow me to catch up in levels very quickly. Then returning trinkets, we already talked about Gauntlet. Generally not so good, but if you need the tempo, sometimes it just has to do. Electromagnetic device, you discover a magnetic mech, and then whenever a friendly minion is magnetized, give it 3/3. The wording here would suggest that that does work with a 6-drop, because it says whenever a minion is magnetized, not when you're doing the magnetizing, give it +3/+3. So it is a little tricky to pick it so early and say, I'm just gonna hit the 6-drop later, but hey, if you're gonna force, this is very strong for the strategy, because now your 6-drop mechs give an additional +3/+3, which is essentially twice the effectiveness. So very good for that scenario. Blingtron is fine. It can be really, really annoying with reborns and stuff like Terran, where you summon a bunch of stuff, but it's pretty expensive, so it's hard to level. I generally don't really take it. In the right board, under the right circumstances, it could be okay, but generally I'm going to be more interested in economy trinkets, stuff that gives me money, because that will allow me to level faster and build a much better board. Automaton kind of speaks for itself. Good if you're doing automaton stuff, otherwise not so much. Then the new greater trinket here is Arena Portrait. That looks really good. You get a Zarina, and your Zarinas also give health. Hello! It's now easier than ever to farm a lot of spells, because there's a lot of tavern spell synergy. And if you already have a Zarina on your board when this rolls around, it's just good to play Zarina without the portraits, because double Zarina, spam tavern spells is a great strategy. And now you'll also get health. This seems almost too good for 2 gold. If you have a board of Divine Shield minions, and especially if you already have a Zarina, this seems like a really solid pick. Artanis sticker. The wording here is a little bit weird, but essentially what happens is you get a Protoss unit offered when you have Artanis sticker. So then when you have Artanis sticker offered, it should basically say get an Immortal or get a Mothership or, you know, get a Colossus. So that's what that does. So for 2 gold, you get a StarCraft unit, which can be fun if you get a Mothership, although starting to farm on turn 9 is a little slow. So you're probably more looking for something like an Immortal that can immediately benefit, give you a lot of tempo. Yeah, farming up a carrier at that point of the game is also going to be a little late. That's sort of the issue with the Artanis units, where you want to get them early, a lot of them, to start farming. So probably one Immortal. There's probably some other Artanis units I'm forgetting about, but this is one I just have to play with. But my intuition here says that it's going to be a little slow to get an Artanis unit on turn 9. Electromagnetic device, the big one. It's going to be a lot easier to know whether you're pushing for the magnetic build at this stage of the game. So if you have the tier 6 mech already, if you've tripled into it, this is a no-brainer. It just, you know, drastically enhances it. You can start spamming spells and get a lot of magnetic value. Boom's monster portraits. You get a Boom's monster, and at the start of every 2 turns, you get another. Can be very good. Again, this is a huge synergy card for the new tier 6 mech that will play a lot of magnetics for you. Even if you don't have any buffs for those magnetics, the fact that you have so many magnetics magnetized will make your Boom's monsters a lot stronger. It's a synergy pick. If you have the right setup for it, this seems very good. Ricari portrait, already covered that one, and the elemental one, very good. We see a lot of end of turn stuff. So again, if you, sorry, I'm repeating myself, but a lot of trinkets is, hey, if you have the synergy for it, it's quite good. Otherwise, you know, not so much. So same thing here. If you have end of turn stuff, this is a great pickup. Turbocharged drills. Turbocharged drill. Get 5 different magnetic mechs of any tier. I've looked at this one before, and maybe I'm just undervaluing the immediate value you're getting from this, but it seems like a 1-use 5 gold trinket that gives me 5 magnetics and then it's just done. Like, are we happy with that? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this one, because my intuition here was that I don't really like it. It seems like a big roll, and if sure, you can get 3 Boom's monsters and then you're like, oh, that's really good, or you could get 0 and then it's really bad. So yeah, not sure on this one. My intuition was that I didn't like it. Then we got Fridge Magnet. That used to be the Beatboxer setup, but now if you have, you know, Boom's monster already, it's fine. If you have a setup for the tier 6 mech where you're playing with Mechanomes, it's fine. But yeah, I don't know. It seems I really like this with Beatboxer. So without Beatboxer, I don't know. Doesn't seem that good. And the last one is Mecha Jiraxis sticker. Already covered this one before. It's not my favorite pick, but you can just take it if you don't really like the others and you have some synergy for magnetics. It's never going to be dead. It's not going to be the worst. It doesn't change your game that much. That was another big reveal. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If there's any cool combos, cool stuff I missed, as always, please do let me know in the comments. I'd really like to know. And if you want to see these cards in action early, make sure to tune in to the early access event on the 25th. They'll be live on my Twitch stream. The event starts at 6 p.m. CEST. That's my time. See you guys there.